So-Called is sponsored by loveboiseparks.org, which donates 50% of all profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at loveboiseparks.org.
Some people, I think, might be on the career path of I need to be at the top of the mountain. And for me, I'm happy being anywhere on the mountain as long as I'm doing something that I'm passionate about with people that are encouraging me to be the best version of myself.
This is Mark Wojcik, and I'm wondering, how's your so-called career? Welcome to So-Called, the podcast that explores the why and how of work. On this episode, we meet Julie Triepke, account manager at PacificSource Health Plans. When we met, I asked Julie to tell me about the company and her role.
We sell health insurance, so individual, Medicare Advantage, and small group, large group health plans.
Okay, and you do what for them?
So as an account manager, I act as the primary point of contact for all of our employer groups in Southwest and Northern Idaho. So when an employer purchases PacificSource for their employee benefit plan, then I work with the employees throughout the year to make sure that all of their questions are answered and that they're satisfied with their health insurance benefits. Okay. And a big part of that role is going on site and doing benefit meetings, so educating the employees on how to be good consumers of healthcare.
Okay, so you're public facing for the organization, right? Or out there with your clients?
Yes,
yeah.
So my role is 50% internal and 50% external.
Okay, all right. What do you enjoy about that role?
The part that I enjoy the most is probably building the relationships. I'm very much a people person.
Yeah.
And so as part of my role, I get to socialize and really build trust with our clientele, that they feel like they have a personal relationship with the employees at PacificSource and that they're really happy with the service that they're being provided.
Yeah, and what's satisfying then? Like what would be a great day for you?
A great day would be probably educating an employee or being able to resolve something for an employee. So if they're upset about how a claim processed may be and I'm able to get that resolved, for me that's a big win. And then being able to educate them on maybe how to do it better next time or differently next time, so that they can learn more about the insurance and just have more knowledge on how to use their benefits.
Yeah, so there sounds like there's an education role in this.
Yeah, health insurance is by all means very overwhelming and can be very confusing. And so I really like educating the employees on really simplifying it so that they can understand their benefits, and that's just more beneficial for them in the end.
Are there things about work that are not as satisfying or harder for you to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say the internal piece. So the 50% internal piece is a little bit harder for me. It's a lot of Excel spreadsheets. It's a lot of detail-oriented things, which is not necessarily my strength. So that's probably the less satisfying part. I do it, and I do it okay, but I would rather be external, meeting with people and building relationships.
People have said to me, well, I try to maximize the time I spend on the things I like and minimize those. So do you have any techniques that you use for that?
Yeah, that's very true. I would say it's easier to prioritize the things that you enjoy over the things that you don't, but I do have timelines and deadlines that go with the piece that I don't enjoy so much. So what I've started doing recently is actually blocking out my calendar for half an hour or an hour and just dedicating that time like it is a meeting, so that I force myself, a meeting with myself, to force myself to do the work that I don't necessarily enjoy.
Careers are often compared to a journey, but we don't necessarily know the destination. Julie's career in the health insurance industry was not what she had in mind when she earned her college degree.
Yeah, I would say, so no, I never thought I would work in health insurance by any means.
Okay.
I grew up in Ontario, Canada.
Okay, great.
Where we don't pay to go to the doctors necessarily.
Right.
And so I went to college and got a degree in business administration
Uh-huh.
with a major in materials and ops management. So really focused on the manufacturing industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty sure when I graduated that I would work on a supply chain team or logistics, some sort of purchasing, or in a manufacturing plant. And the universe brought me to Missoula, Montana, where they actually don't produce hardly anything. So I found myself wondering, what do I do with this degree that I just earned? And the first position I applied for was with a preferred provider organization. So in the industry, it's also known as a PPO network.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the interview and they asked me if I knew anything about health insurance or what they did. And I said, no, and I don't understand why I have to pay to go to the doctor. And they pretty much said, perfect, you're hired, because we will teach you everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely not planned that I thought I would be in this industry.
Did you find any skills from your, whether it's school or past work, that were applicable?
Definitely, I would say when I was hired in a very entry-level clerical position. In fact, my first job duty was scanning 60 boxes of provider contracts into an electronic form. So I spent 6 months pretty much in a dark room scanning papers through. But while I did that, I also took the initiative to ask questions. And over the 7-year period that I ended up working there, I just continued to grow and learn. And so I would say the biggest skill is just to be open to knowledge, and that knowledge is power. And just put yourself out there to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know anything about this, but I'm willing to learn about it.
As you said, you came from a completely different healthcare system, and so the newcomer's perspective, the questions you asked, I'm guessing maybe they had never even thought of those questions, the people you were working with.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I pretty much related the industry to the manufacturing industry at the time, where the insurance company was the manufacturer and the PPO network that I worked for was the distributor, and our end users were the providers, because we were negotiating contracts with them.
Okay.
And so I was able to still use kind of the same logic and understand the industry at a very basic level at that time 13 years ago. And as we all know, the industry has changed a lot over the last 13 years.
Yeah. Julie's drive and determination comes from her mom's strong influence on her life and career. Who has influenced your approach to work?
So that's a loaded question.
Okay.
I came from a single parent home,
Uh-huh.
and it was a struggle for a long time growing up. My mom is definitely my biggest influencer, and she was a single mom of 2 at the age of 20 without her GED. So she did the best that she could to provide for us, and in her spare time she went back and did get her high school diploma, and then did go on to college and earned a degree in human resources.
Wow.
So I would say she's been my biggest influencer in regards to if you have enough drive and determination, you can pretty much get anything done.
Yeah.
And also, it's okay to be a woman and be independent and build your own career and not have to rely on another person.
Yeah.
And then also, in addition to that, I did have a big sister through Big Brothers Big Sisters growing up.
Oh, great. Okay.
And so she was definitely my mentor, and she was educated, she was very career oriented, and between the two of them, that's when I set my sights on, I do want a degree, I do want to, kind of check that box off in life and move on and build a career for myself. And then I would say in the last 10 years, it was definitely the president of the company in Montana. He saw potential in me, even though I started at a very basic clerical position. He was a great mentor, very patient, very complimentary, and PacificSource was actually one of our clients. So when I talk about building relationships, I built a relationship with enough people here that when we moved to Boise 6 years ago, I applied at PacificSource, and I definitely have a few mentors here as well.
Perseverance, flexibility, and adaptability are characteristics that serve Julie in transforming an entry-level job into a career. Do you have any advice for people starting their career about, well, I could say any advice, but I was specifically thinking about patience.
Yeah, I would say it was very humbling to start in that position for me. I thought, I'll get a degree and I'll get this fancy job somewhere in Toronto, Canada, and I'll be making a ton of money and I'll travel all the time, and that's not what happened. So I think the key is to just be flexible and adaptable, but at the end of the day, be self-aware enough to understand whether or not you're in an environment where you're thriving or an environment where you're maybe not the best version of yourself. And as long as you're working hard and working towards a common goal with the organization that you work for, then I think that the outcome will be really great.
Yeah. Okay. And if you're in a situation where you're not thriving, as you say, how do you, any advice on continuing through that?
Just looking back over my career, I would say it was I never recognized that I wasn't thriving. Others around me would recognize it. And then those mentors that I speak of were the ones to say, hey, did you ever think of this? So I think my biggest advice would be to create your own personal board, so to speak, of people that can recognize when you're thriving. Because sometimes it's really hard to look internal and realize I'm not really happy in this role and maybe I should do something else, where sometimes it's much easier for other people around you to recognize that and just be open to listening.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it is hard to know in the middle of something, whether it's hard because it's just hard getting somewhere or whether this is just hard.
Right. Yeah, that dark room was hard.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, but this is my only option right now. So I'm going to go with it and I'm going to make the best of it. And I hope that it leads me somewhere. And I think I had the hope and the belief in myself that if I just stick with this long enough and I ask enough questions and I do what I say I'm going to do, then the outcome will work in my favor.
Following through and keeping your word has also been a part of Julie's success.
I think the biggest key is doing what you say you're going to do. That's what then eventually turns into trust. And when somebody trusts that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, whether that's a welcome email or it was nice to meet you at this event, or it can be anything on just responding timely and doing what you say you're going to do, that eventually builds trust. I think on a more personal level, it's having the ability to listen and ask questions about the other person. And I've gone through my own self-development over the last 10 years because I love to talk, that I have to be able to rein it in sometimes and actually listen to what the other people are saying.
Rather than setting specific career goals for herself, Julie seeks to approach her life and work wholeheartedly, letting her enthusiasm guide her along the way. So looking ahead for you, like what would you want to do next? Well, and whether that's career-wise or personally, is there any big project you're working on?
So that's a great question because I have done so much self-development over the last 10 years that I really try to live wholeheartedly. I live very much in the moment. I don't think about what has happened or what will happen. So I don't necessarily set goals for myself, but I have found that if I keep working hard and I work with a lot of passion and enthusiasm, that gets recognized. Yeah. So just in the last 6 years at PacificSource, I've been promoted 2 different times. So I like to think that my future looks bright. I just don't know what the universe is going to put in my place yet. So how do you balance that? Do you do a periodic review of where you are? How do you do that evaluation? Yeah. Or do you? Yeah. Maybe that's the question. So I think it's the willingness to get out of bed every day, to get up and get dressed and go to work. I can honestly say we have a great culture at PacificSource. I work with a great team. that to me is irreplaceable, and I can't put a dollar amount on that. Some people, I think, might be on the career path of, I need to be at the top of the mountain. And for me, I'm happy being anywhere on the mountain as long as I'm doing something that I'm passionate about with people that are encouraging me to be the best version of myself. I just place a lot of value on that and the ability to do community type events. So whether that's programs through the chamber or being on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters, the company really values the community in Boise, and so they really encourage their employees to participate in those events and those programs. And so for me, it's extremely fulfilling when your career doesn't feel like a job.
So if you weren't doing this job, what would you be doing?
I think I would probably be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And something to do with helping people, but I haven't quite figured out what that is yet, nor am I willing to take the risk to do it yet. But right now, I'm very satisfied in what I'm doing. But if I wasn't doing this and I found myself kind of stuck between career choices, I would definitely take the risk and follow some sort of path. Because I would rather take the risk and know if it does or doesn't work out than always wonder what if.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think you're probably in a good position to be, because you're out and talking to different people and you're in a very complex kind of business, there may be an opportunity that presents itself, I would suspect, where you're like, hey, here's something that's not being done and I could help. So
that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So when we talk about the future,
yeah.
I'm thinking I'm just going to put these things out in the universe and something will come back to me at some point. And I'm most likely is going to be due to a relationship or somebody that I've met or I've connected and they just think, oh, this would be great for Julie.
So looking back, from where you are now, is there any advice that you'd give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to learn about emotional intelligence.
Okay.
When I moved from Montana to PacificSource, I went from working for a company with 6 employees to over 600 employees. And I didn't necessarily realize at the time that changes the culture. And I thought I was just being really outgoing and asking questions, and that might have come across to other people as competitive. So just having that self-awareness and emotional intelligence to understand how my actions are affecting those around me. So now I would say that I'm more self-aware in my strengths and my weaknesses, and so it comes across better if you admit your flaws to others instead of letting them find them, so to speak. So if I can admit a flaw and make a joke about it, then the other person kind of sees it as, well, at least she understands that this is how it's coming across. And so it's less, it gives off less of a competitive vibe. And then I think it's just look at facial expressions, look at body language, look at when you're speaking, what are others, or how are others reacting? And I've really have had to learn that it's okay to not ask the question. Sometimes it's okay to be the quietest one in the room sometimes.
Yeah.
And just having that emotional intelligence to see those opportunities. Having the emotional intelligence to realize that every situation is different and every human is different, and your interactions with them will be different. The other thing that I would have told my younger self is to probably take vacations. There was a period of time where I just saved all of my PTO because work was my top priority. I didn't take the vacations. I didn't go take time off to see my family in Canada. I missed events for my children. I've missed moments in exchange for my career.
Mm-hmm.
And so my advice to my younger self would be take the vacations, take those opportunities as they come, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And at the end of the day, your career is just a small piece of who you are. We talked about work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, there isn't really a balance because it's all enjoyable, but it's remembering that it's okay for something to wait until tomorrow so that I go to the dance recital. And it's great to do something that you're passionate about, but you shouldn't have to compromise the other things in your life that you're passionate about because of your career.
So-Called is sponsored by LoveBoiseParks.org, which donates 50% of all profits to support, promote, and preserve open spaces in Boise, Idaho. Use promo code SOCALLED for 10% off all your purchases at LoveBoiseParks.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Subscribe and leave us a review. So-Called is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts.